Second hypothesis that I want to talk to you about today is about the nature of jobs themselves. Now, working for salary is going to move towards working for meaning. Meaning, people are not going to work for meaningless goals and metrics and balance scorecards and numbers and utilization percentages that mean nothing to them. They're going to work for value creation. Unless you tell me what value does my job add, or what am I part of that's bigger than myself, jobs don't mean anything. So there is a move from working just for money, which was probably very true 40 years ago, to working for meaning. The Gen Z, the millennials, coupled with the harsh realities of pandemic, which shows the transience of life, which shows the meaningless pursuit of capitalism, if everything can end with just an invisible virus, people are going to seek for more meaning than ever before. And if your organization does not create jobs that are aligned to meaning, and if it's just aligned to useless, meaningless numbers that only benefit the organization, then you're going to find that it's very difficult for your organization to thrive. I was talking to somebody in the United Nations a few weeks ago. Here is an employee of the United Nations. And I was looking forward to the conversation, of course, because I wanted to talk to him about meaning, and what better a person to talk to than a person who works for the United Nations. But what I heard was something very different. He said, Aditya, I put in 12 hours of work a day. I work so hard, but I feel hollow at the other end of it. I said, what do you mean you work for the UN? He said, so what? I mean, the UN is great, but my work is meaningless. I'm judged on things which doesn't really require me to be working in the UN. The same metrics apply to even other organizations. I'm a cog in a machine. That made me think. One of the greatest critics of modern day capitalism, one of the greatest critics of modern day jobs was Karl Marx. And while Karl Marx probably did not get the full model right, he had some very good points with respect to why we feel unhappy and meaningless and hollow in our lives, even though we are richer than ever before, even though we are part of better brands than ever before, even though we live in bigger houses than ever before. Why do we feel hollow at the end of the day? Karl Marx says that earlier on, before the capitalistic ride of the world, labor meant something very different. Labor asked us to externalize what is good inside us. Meaning, if I were to make a chair, I am carving the wood, I am punching the nails, I am making the chair. It's not about the money I get from the chair. It's about I'm transferring what's good inside me to the chair, and I can see that it's my baby. I made it, and everything about it is me. So the act of making the chair, because I have the end-to-end ownership of making the chair, the act of making the chair, in it lies the meaning, not the money I get by selling the chair. The money I get by selling the chair is just a byproduct that I can use to buy more wood to make more chairs. But meaning doesn't lie in the external validation of my produce. Meaning lies in the act of work itself. So meaning does not lie so much in salary, or so much in client satisfaction scores, or so much in meaningless metrics that you're evaluated in, or even that promotion. All that's great. All that is byproducts. But what Marx says is that meaning lies in the work itself. In fact, that is validated by ancient wisdom across the world, isn't it? The Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu scripture, talks about how yoga karma sukhaushalam, which says duty well discharged is its own reward. What happens in a modern economy is that there is a disconnection between what you do all day, and all you're working for is for an external reward. And that's the system that we're all in. And that's one of the reasons why we can never find meaning in work. And when we can't find meaning in work, what happens is, even if you double your salary, it's a temporary spike in happiness, but you revert to feeling hollow at the end of it. Now, that is the bane of capitalism. It gives you a pseudo feeling of growth, but actually keeps you pretty hollow and meaningless. That you become a slave to salary, you become a slave to external validation, and you don't find meaning in that 8 hours of work itself. Now, why is it difficult to bring in meaning in your organizations, to your employees? One of the reasons is modern work is all about specialization. Again, Adam Smith says that if you are expected to find meaning by making a chair, you can make 12 chairs a day, but you find meaning in it. But if you get 12 people and each of them make complete chairs by themselves, they can make 12 into 12, 144 chairs. But if you start specializing, meaning your work is only hitting that one nail, and you specialize, your job is just to fit the legs, your job is just to polish the wood, then the 12 of us together won't make 144 chairs. We may make 1,500 chairs. Imagine the productivity rise, it's tenfold, more than tenfold. And that is why mass production, scalable operations in capitalism strip away meaning behind the work, the happiness behind making something that is externalizing the good inside you, to just producing more for profitability. But we cannot go behind, isn't it? We cannot lose the race in capitalism. So that is something which we cannot go back to making chairs on our own. The pandemic hasn't made things better with remote working and people away from each other. Meaning has only reduced. At least social bonds used to give meaning at work. Even if the work itself did not give meaning, being together with people, having shared objectives, having that coffee break or lunch break used to infuse meaning. But we don't know post-pandemic how socializing is going to be. So it only strips away more meaning from work. What can you do in your organization to infuse meaning into people's work, considering the inherent drawbacks of our capitalistic society? There is so much more onus on leaders and managers to provide clarity, meaning, and purpose, because work itself doesn't really give that because of specialization and other 100 things. There is so much more onus on leadership development. There is so much more onus on managers' ability to motivate their teams to find meaning and purpose in what they do. Managers are those bridges that connect organization purpose that we spoke about as point one to individual meaning of work, which is the unit of analysis is a person, a job. Now, there are two things required for this. One is clarity. Every job or every person in your organization needs to have clarity on what is my job and how does it connect to our purpose-led organization. Okay, we are here to provide experiences for people, but my job seems to have nothing in relation to that. I'm just punching in some numbers all day. So it's the manager's job to translate the purpose of an organization into what it means for your job, which is a small cog in the machine. So you are not doing everything it requires to provide experience to consumers, but your job in a way contributes there. There is no better example for this than that famous example of the janitor in NASA. Have you heard of the janitor in NASA? Is that when a few people walked into NASA, they saw a janitor doing his job, and a janitor's job is to tidy equipment, keep the place clean and sterile. So they asked the janitor, "Hey, what's your role here in NASA?" And the janitor said, "My role is to send man to moon safely." What? That this was still the 60s or 70s. So man to moon safely was the verbatim there. Should be person to moon safely. But I'm quoting from 50 years ago. So he said, my role is to send man to moon safely. He said, what? You're a janitor. Your job is to clean. He said, my job is to clean. My job is defined by my education, my background, my inability to do things more. But my role is something that I define for myself. And if I don't do my job properly, there is more scope for dirt in the equipment. And these are highly sophisticated equipment, and there is more vulnerability during launch. And if there is more vulnerability during launch, sending man to moon safely doesn't become a reality. So my job is to clean, but my role is to put man to moon safely. Now, this is an example of finding meaning in work. While some people are naturally motivated, like this janitor, for example, to be able to zoom into their jobs, at the same time zoom out of their jobs and look for the organization's purpose to marry it with their job. Not all of us are gifted with that ability or motivated with that ability. And therefore, organizations, leaders, managers, fundamental job out of a crisis, in the future, to future-proof organizations, is the ability to provide clarity, to marry individual jobs, not to meaningless statistics and metrics and targets and sales, but to the why, to the larger purpose. And then magic happens. So that's the second shift that will be important to future-proof your organization.